Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3733 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, comedy on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. And we can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And it is such a high honor. It has been such a long time that I have been tripping around trying to find this cat, weaved my way through all the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi with Emil Richards and talking to John Densmore about this cat and then getting him confused with Herbie Flowers and then ultimately stumbling into serendipity with Denny Sywell. And I said, do you know where this cat's at? He's like, yeah, I talk to him all the time. Here's his phone number. And so what a way to get to end 2017 and head into 2018. Legendary bass player Ray Neapolitan, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Jake, it's good to be here, and thanks for having me on.
Did you recognize that track coming in?
Unfortunately, I didn't.
It's okay. I mean, I just want to. It's okay. I don't. It's stretching you out. The cat. Just for the audience out there listening in, the cat we're talking to is one of the most elastic, stretching conversational bass players, and that was a mercurial album that I didn't actually realize you were playing on until I used to have a copy of it. It was Johnny Allman's Music Machine. And that tune was called Agadir Sunset. And that was with all these cats like Joe Pass and Leonard Feather and Charles Kennard, all these spirits that have been on the journey with me along the way. And there's Neapolitan playing bass. I'm not even sure who was on Vibes. I think, but it just, I kind of wanted to just start there. If you could talk a little bit, because your career goes back to you were doing in Chicago what Steve Swallow and Scotty LaFaro were doing. Swallow was doing it in New York, and Scotty was doing it on the West Coast. And I just wanted you to talk about your concept of the jazz life, what that meant to you, and why that was intoxicating for you in the early '60s before you moved to LA.
Right. Well, in Chicago at that time, as I was growing up in the 50s, jazz was just sparking at that time, and it caught my ear in high school. And, actually before that, because I must have been around 14 or something when I used to listen on the radio, and it was Al Benson, and he would come on at midnight, and he would play a lot of rhythm and blues and then a lot of jazz. And somehow it just pulled me in. I thought that was the coolest thing I've ever heard, And from then on, it just started growing. I was then in high school, I started playing, way before that I was playing trumpet. And it just wasn't right for me. You know what I mean? I played through school. I didn't want to go in the marching band. That was too uncool for me.
Right.
And the bands I was playing with at the time never had a bass player. But there would be a bass around. And as it progressed, I started playing the bass more than the trumpet, not even knowing what I was doing. And then finally I decided, hey, I love this instrument, and I started studying. And it was all leading towards the jazz scene at the time. And at that time, I was really listening to Paul Chambers was my idol at the time, Sam Jones. I would listen to those guys. And when I seriously started thinking about studying, I studied, it was like the Music Conservatory in Chicago. There was a lot of guys, and one of the teachers was Joe Daly, the saxophonist.
Wow. George Marsh played with that
And
guy. Very free cat.
yeah, he was a very free cat, but his harmonic sense at the time just was incredible. Let me preface that by saying, prior to that, I started studying bass seriously with a great jazz player from Chicago named Jerry Lofstrom.
I just want to also be clear for the audience out there, because in 1953, Monk Montgomery recorded with the electric bass on a jazz album with Art Farmer, but you're talking about the upright bass at this point, right?
I'm talking about the upright. Yeah,
okay, so because I mean, you made your you were cooking grooves with the Doors. I know you were playing electric bass to add extra punch because Manzarek couldn't get it off the pedals. But you're talking about upright, right? So in the 50s. So you go ahead.
I'm talking about upright. Yeah, we'll get into the electric bass as it came around Don Ellis time. So anyway, we're back in Chicago, and so I really got serious about the string bass, and that led to really studying and doing a bunch of silly gigs, and gradually working my way down to Rush Street, where everything was happening at the time for the white guys. Then there was the South Side, where everything was happening down there, which was really happening down there. So, after I was playing some for a couple years, and we had this trio called the Danny Longo Trio, just bass, drums, piano, and we sort of imitated, like Wynton Kelly, that kind of just poppin' trio kind of things. And we worked all the clubs on Rush Street for the longest time. And the opposing trio was this Byron Olson trio, where Chuck DeMonaco was the bass player.
Oh my God! But just for the this is makes my heart. I'm so happy to go into the new year talking to Ray Neapolitan. I just was transcribing this thing with Sidewall, where Domenico was actually he was a real truck driver too. The dude drove a truck.
He drove the truck at O'Hare Airport.
Okay, so Domenico, but after his day gig, he was playing in a jazz conversational trio.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
Absolutely, and he was, we were like, I was a couple years old, 2 years older than Chuck, but Chuck was, what can I say? He had such ears that you couldn't believe. Anything he touched was just musical, and he was just.
Oh, I love it.
I can't tell you how much he helped me out as far as just talking about music, and just analyzing Stravinsky, and just doing things like that. That if it wasn't Chuck around, I don't know if I would have had that opportunity, or even thought of it. But anyway, so we had the two trios in town, and we were working mainly at a club called the La Bistro, and we would work between the Cloister, the La Bistro, Mr. Kelly.
Yeah. Wait, hold on. I want to ask you something. Wasn't there the Novak trio too at that time with Atlas?
Larry Novak.
Yeah.
Yes, Larry Novak.
So there was like a number of different. You were just channeling all this on all this conversational trio music. Unbelievable. So
exactly.
Go ahead. Continue.
And so with the club, like the Cloisters or Kellys or something, they always brought in the main artist. So we had a chance, to work with, a great singer in Chicago, Lurleen Hunter. We worked with Ernestine Anderson, Lorez Alexandria, Jackie Paris. There's all these kind of people coming through, and it was schooling for me. That's where we learned tunes. We learned the right changes to tunes, and it progressed from there. And I kept on studying. I was studying with Joe Daly, and there was a couple of us in that group, Jimmy DiPasquale, who came to L.A. as well, and is a wonderful film writer. And
wow.
he was a great saxophone player.
Wow.
And Richie Corpolongo was another one at that time that were just stretching it, and this was, just as Miles Ahead came out, and we would be just analyzing that record, and as the whole modal thing came around, we were just, our eyes and ears were wide open, so I studied through there, I was studying classical as well, playing in some small orchestras, just trying to, feeling I had to do that, and I loved that as well.
What I want to get at? Here's what I want you to talk about to younger cats out there about, because I interviewed Miroslav Vitouš last year, and he was like, I was sort of paying homage to his lead voice as a bass player, and he said, that stuff was way before me. That was going on with Bill Evans and Scotty LaFaro, and in like '61. And I want you to talk to the cats about how you can speak, how you can have this incredible dialogue and conversation with an instrument that most people consider to be a timekeeping instrument. You can actually converse with it in this incredibly melodic way, and
right.
I just more taking it out of the conventional sense, because without bass solos, you don't need bass solos to have to be conversational with the bass.
That's correct. And I think it really started opening up for me with Paul Chambers. And then it gradually moved on until you started hearing, some of the more modern players of the time, where it wasn't about the time that much. It was a conversation. It was complimenting the soloist, looking for those open spots.
I love it. What was Paul Chambers like? That to me is like when time did not enter the equation. You didn't want to be, obviously, you didn't want to get too free, but it's just like this idea.
Well,
I just want you to talk. Like, what was Chambers doing specific?
Well, even after Paul, because Paul played a lot of time, but he brought it. Just like if you go back to Jimmy Blanton, he took it to another step.
Slam
and
Stewart,
another step.
Absolutely.
Slam, but for me, getting freer with the instrument didn't happen until California. It didn't happen until the mid-'60s. At that time, and that's when I first really started listening to Scotty. And then when that happened, it was all over.
Well, what was going? I want you, because everybody wanted to be. I talked to Bob Jones, rest in peace, the drummer from We Five,
mm-hmm.
and he said that when he was hanging out in Sausalito with cats, everybody, all the bass players wanted to be Scotty LaFaro. They wanted to be. They actually wanted to be junkies too. They wanted to sound like Scotty, but yet I don't want to ignore Swallow or Peacock as well. But with Scotty, could you just put it in lay terms what he did that got you off so much?
Well, it was just his freedom. When you heard him with Bill, the first few times, I just never really heard anything like that. You've heard people approach that kind of playing, but it was just inspiring. It would keep me up at night. And I wanted to know everything about it. I wanted to know how high his strings were. Was he playing with 2 fingers, 3 fingers? Was he, how big was the bass? The show, how could he do that? That was the thing. And his harmonic sense, that also blew us all away. And all of a sudden, I remember, I don't know who was that told me, and we said, well, Scotty's, we all played with, first of all, you played with 1 finger, the old days. Then you started playing with 2 fingers in your right hand, and you're plucking in. And Scotty just had this light touch, but somebody told a friend of mine, I forget who it was, Scotty told him that if you hold a matchbook in your 3rd and 4th finger, I mean, your little finger and the one next to it, you would hold the matchbook, would free you up until you really had the technique down. And that's how I started really, trying
That's
to get
incredible.
that kind of technique
Wow.
down.
So you actually, but I mean, again, part of it was also the learning medium, the listening medium was auditory. It was not visual. You were hearing, you could go see him live, absolutely, but you were basically picking this up, you were like an autodidact in some ways.
Yes, exactly. And then it just, not everyone wanted to play free, like that. I mean, there was groups of us, but usually we didn't have everyone together who wanted to play that way. So, you might have a bass player want to play that way, then you didn't have a drummer.
Right.
And he was just stomping, So when it came together, it gave us a chance to really start understanding that, and everybody was listening to Bill at that point. He just blew us away. But none of us, at that time, a lot of us didn't have that harmonic sense, as Scotty did. And playing on the tops of the chords, and not playing the roots, on one of the chord, and it was a conversation, it was in the moment, that all that happened. So it was a fight for a long time, especially for me, because I had to play all these different roles. 1 minute I'm playing with a strictly 4/4 big band, and then the next time I'm playing with, a real elastic kind of trio,
I mean, it just Neapolitan, I want to read you this quote because I want to go back to Coltrane and Elvin for a minute, in that mid-'60s period, but I want you to just take this for what it is. Tabakin was telling me this yesterday, kind of opened my mind up, but I wanted you to talk about the music that I love the most. There's not a lot of push and pull, but the music that preceded the music that I love was full of angst, and white journalists like myself were calling it hate music. This music that Coltrane was playing, and I just pray that I would never have called it that, okay? But this is what Tabakin told me yesterday. I just transcribed it. He said, I've had experiences. I have experiences where the bass player, drummer, and piano player aren't really playing together. You're in the middle of it, but it's a relatively traditional reality. And this is the part. He goes, Sonny Rollins was a master, obviously. He sometimes would play with rhythm sections, and you're thinking to yourself, why does he have to play with these people? Most people would give their right arm to play with him. And he said, I think he got off on the negative energy of trying to have to overpower a less than adequate rhythm section. It creates a certain energy when you have. It creates a certain energy when you have to play time, and the time is not happening. With the traditional rhythm section, it's not like you're floating on a rhythm section like Lester Young. You're maintaining your rhythm in spite of what's going on, and it creates another dynamic. And I thought about it, and I said, that's not that dissimilar. Even though I wasn't even birthed, it's not that dissimilar to Elvin and Train. To the idea, not that they were not competent rhythm sections, but it was this angst. It was this force of nature where Train actually had to overpower. Can you riff on that and what you think about that comment from Tabakin?
Well, it is true, because there was a lot of bands at the time, to switch the station. All of a sudden, we were playing. We had a band called. What the hell was it? But anyway, it was just.
Was it the microtonal blues band or something?
Well, no, that was even more. That was structured, but there was a couple of bands where there was no chord changes.
I loved it. Wait, in Chicago, colors. In Chicago or L.A.?
No, this is all L.A.
Oh, I got to know who was in these bands. LA. I need. Was it like you and Domenico playing double upright or something? I mean, it's insane.
No, not in this particular one, but it was like Tony Ortega, Mike Lang, the piano player, Mike Lang.
Badasses, badasses. Tony Ortega was a badass, by the way.
Really,
Oh.
Batman, we used to call him.
Dude, he could blow, man.
And
But going back to it, I don't want to. But I mean, there were no chord changes, and so go from there with the angst of the rhythm just go on that Tobacco theme. I really want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, we would sort of say this is what we're going to do, or start off with something, and we would just play. That would be it. We would go through different tempos. We would go through different sort of sound colors. It was just so exciting when it happened. It was just magical. You would levitate. It would feel like it would feel like you weren't even playing. You were watching yourself play. That's
exactly.
How easy it was.
You were leaving. You left your physical body.
Yeah. And I get chills when I think about it because it's a couple times, it was just spiritual. And I can only imagine, like with Coltrane and all, and Sonny and all that, when that really happened for them, or even Miles or all that, it was another feeling altogether. But I remember then it got really crazy where, when there would be some sort of notation, but it would be, okay, you played green here for a while. Then we're going to go to, some sort of a static kind of thing.
Wow.
Then it would be like a line, an arrow going up, meaning you would accelerate.
So it was crazy. Yeah, it was synesthesia. It was synesthesia. Like you'd hear. That you'd feel these different senses based on this, that's in green, opaque, go forward, tempo.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's insane. That's insane.
And then when we tried to bring this into a club like Dante's or something, they would just throw us out. I'm
sorry, but dude, I don't know. You were able to sing for your supper. The Spirit of '76. I think you're on that album with Amel. And
right.
I mean, just that stuff is so. You weren't getting kicked out that night; they were recording that night. But some of it got too.
No, yeah. Well, that's a whole nother. This was Amel's thing was a few years later.
Right.
Where with the Microtonal Blues Quartet and with the we had a various. There was a few different titles of the same guys, basically in the band, where we started with the Odd Times. We were at that point we're playing in 7 and 9 and 5 and which really nobody was doing, but Emil sort of came back with that after his sojourn with the Maharishi and the Beatles and so forth at that time. So that was really exciting, but that was really organized. And it was very musical, and we went through a lot of permutations with that thing, with Amel and that band, and then that led into the Don Ellis thing, which was, what can I say?
It was an electric bath. It was an electric bath. Yeah. I just need to know, from your point of view, I'm not talking about incompetent rhythm section, but I guess when I go, I don't see a ton of live music today, but when I do go see jazz, I hate labels, but it seems so there's a formula trip going on. And part of that is the clientele, and it's become an upper crust kind of bag, and you get one solo, and then the guitar solo, and there's a piano solo, and it's become very classicalized, where like in fact you don't want to create that tension and release, and that tension and release is what Domenico and Neapolitan and Atlas and Senator Eugene, all these cats. It was like, to me, it's the blues. The blues was right along.
You're right. Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's what
Absolutely.
I hear, man. I guess what I'm saying is angst and friction in a rhythm section isn't all bad all the time. It doesn't need to be smooth. That's where you come up with smooth, you know?
Absolutely true. You know, and you're correct in saying I don't hear that kind of experimentation anymore. Harmonically, maybe yes, but
Rhythmically, yes. Rhythmically, it's gotten tamer.
You're absolutely right. You know, and especially, you know, the younger players who are very schooled now and, you know, seem to be just, you know, a lot of times some of these bands just sound like, you know, a weekend at Berkeley, you know.
A weekend at Berkeley. That's the greatest line in the world. No, but also, I got to be honest, man. It's not, I just don't want to, like, I've been just, you know, harping on it, but it's like, I mean, there were so many places to play live. I don't think people really know, or people can't really get comfortable experimenting because they are so insecure. They don't know the next time they're going to get on the bandstand. So that all of a sudden they're just like, it's like a chops fest, you know, it's like a facility fest, and you wind up staring at the wall. You know, it's like it's not a.
So right.
You know.
So right.
So
yeah.
I mean, how do you?
You're
I mean,
absolutely right.
You know, and it's like a weekend at Berkeley, but it's like, you know, like I mean, literally, I talked to Dick Shorey last night. Like, it's mind blowing that not only is he still alive, he's thriving. Okay, and he's like, you know, and it's like he's like, we just had 20,000 people at this percussion event, festival, wherever, somewhere in the Midwest, and I said, you know, Dick. I said, that's great. I mean, it's everybody speaking to you know, preaching to the choir. I mean, you don't have these, it's like everybody getting together in one place so you can feel invigorated, but it doesn't help the culture of music in different regions of the country when you're just all just getting together and breaking it out. You might think you're making progress, or you might think that there's incredible ideas, but it's not, musical vocabulary is not growing. And the only way it grows is on the bandstand. I believe you were one of the cats that was fully responsible for growing musical vocabulary on the bandstand.
Well, I don't know about that, but...
you were right in the mix, though. I mean, you were right there. And maybe it got too free.
It was time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was absolutely the time that everything, you know, it was the mid-'60s. Everything was going on. You know, the war, you know, the government, Nixon, everything was going on, and there was this energy in everyone, and that's what, you know, with Don Ellis, that we got close to it, you know, a lot of times, you know, but what can I say? The closest we got was that first show we did in '68, I believe, was the Monterey Jazz Festival.
Yes.
And when we went on the bandstand, they weren't ready for Don Ellis. We just blew them away.
Oh my!
It was
God.
like the whole band was floating on air. You know, it was one of the most wonderful experiences.
How many trap sets did he have on the stage?
There was 2 full drum sets, Steve Bohannon and Steve, can't remember his last, at the time, and then Ralph Humphreys replaced him. And then we had congas and sometimes more percussion. And, you know, there was 3 bass players.
Three electric bass players?
3 acoustic.
Oh,
you know,
my
3
God.
upright
Oh, my
players.
God. This is insane.
It was myself, Chuck DeMonaco, and Bill Plummer.
Oh, my. Are you kidding me? This is this is mine. I mean, I need photos. Anyway, so
I'll send you a photo. I'll send you some photos.
You know what it is, Neapolitan? Yeah. I just, it's almost like, so they weren't ready for you, but you know what? You fucking played your asses off.
We won them over.
Right.
Yeah, we won them over, and it was just like, oh my God, you know, they get it. So, and then, you know, even with the Odd Times, and, you know, and Don was, you know, one of the first guys that, you know, he played his trumpet through an Echoplex, you know, and got all the different sounds out of it. And he would push us to experiment, you know, even on our solos and so forth. he wanted us to get out there, but with control and know what we're doing.
Well, but so I want to be very clear about this, though, because I've been in this raging debate. Would you be able to put a year on the year that he put the Echoplex on his trumpet? Because I've done a couple interviews with Randy Brecker, and Brecker picked up Abercrombie's wah pedal one day in the studio. Rest in peace, John Abercrombie, and he put it on his trumpet and started playing it with Dreams, that band Dreams. And then Miles used to come down and check it out. Next thing you know, Miles had a wah pedal on his trumpet.
Right.
But someone said Ellis might have been the first.
I absolutely think he was, because it was frowned on for a long time.
Oh, I can't even see. But it's like I really don't think without the hard scrabble blues that you got, the street scholar mentality approach that you had. You won them over because the music still swung so hard, as opposed to today.
Well, that it did.
It did. Yeah. It wasn't just because you can see people today and they're playing stuff odd metered, odd time signatures, but there's a sterility to it. There's a seriousness. There's as Swallow said, it's you come out of the academy. There's an academy kind of quality to it. You guys were just just street scholars. Not to mention, and in full fairness, Sandoz acid was completely legal. So minds were wide open. Open, and I've that's part of it. But I don't know if that would have. You won them over because the music, the blues was. Don't forget about the blues, John.
Well, we were so excited. Oh. You could see the energy from the players, the band. We were just grinning. We were having so much fun, in the beginning at least. And as I was mentioning, Don pushed us to. We were. There were some amps back there. We would play radio during some of the solos. We would try to find some. It was just crazy stuff that we were doing. Then Don went to some plastic instruments, and and then we got into the Indian thing, and then I even started playing the sitar at one point.
Okay, so you know what? We've been just cooking the groove here. Let's sit back for a minute. I queued up this piece of music, so we're segueing perfectly into it. Let's take a listen to this, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Okay, great.
music on the Jake Feinberg Show, brought to you by Abbott Taylor Jewelers, the Jewish Community Center of Southern Arizona, Butch Diggs of Diggs Dental, Craig Pretzinger of Allstate Insurance, and we thank them for their support so we can play absolutely mind-blowing Indian psychedelic raga music for Ray Neapolitan. I mean, that was called Yentra 2 on the Cosmic Brotherhood 1969. When did you actually decide to... This group of people, I mean, Lynn Blessing, I've interviewed Budemer. Dennis Budemer is such a badass. Yeah. I mean, dude, this was like right. This. I mean, I interviewed Bill Goodwin 6 years ago. I never thought I'd ever get to Neapolitan. This is I just want to say that the cat who uploaded this to YouTube, he said about this tune, Yentra 2, important hint. This is the perfect tune to get stoned with. The end of the tune will blow your mind. Turn the volume louder, lean back, and watch the clouds. Maybe the ones you exhale along the way. Anyway, dude, explain to me I was actually kind of blown away because when I just hung out with Emil in Toluca Lake, he was talking about this guy, Hari Harao. Okay, this Hari Harao, and Hari Harao was preceded Ravi Shankar. He was here before Ravi.
Exactly.
But I'm just like, dude, and I know that was even before you moved to California, but it's like, when did you pick up the sitar? I mean, how? Like, they're just laying around at Western Studios and.
Well, no. It all generated, first from Emil's group and then to Don Ellis. I got familiar with the sitar with Hari Harao, and I used to play a little tambura for him.
Exactly.
Which was really just a drone. And I was just fascinated by the instrument. And then as years progressed, and then with Don Ellis, when we started doing a lot of odd times and so forth, Don even mentioned, he said, why don't one of you get... See, Don is responsible for me picking up the electric bass, number one, and he pushed me to the sitar as well. So the first sitar, I think he bought it for me, and I spent, many hours trying to not master that. I wouldn't say that, but at least to be able to play the thing. And I studied with Hari Har, and I even got a chance to meet Ravi and get some, what was sort of a lesson, and it was with Don Ellis, and then through the rehearsals, we would, he said, I want to put a sitar solo in Turkish bass, in the song Turkish Bath. Right. So, I just started, just working at it, and, it is what it is. It's not.
I wasn't sure on this track if you could tell. Because this is a 3 sitar. I mean, I'll send you my interview with Goodwin. He was talking about a 3 sitar front line, and
Yes.
Were you?
It was.
Yeah, Plummer, you, and I'm looking here.
It was Hirsch Hamill, I think.
Oh, you're 100. No, you're 100. First of all, Milt Holland, the most badass drummer ever.
Milt? Yeah, how about that?
Tabla, Hirsch Hamill, sitar, and vocals, and tambora. Ray Neapolitan, Jan Stewart on Sarode, Ray Anthony, Lynn Blessing. Freaking genius, left us way too soon.
I know, Lynn.
God, this guy, Mike Craden, playing Trans Celeste, Duo Vigong, American Tree Bells, Boo Bams, and then Carol Kay and played bass, and Maurice Miller, who I'm not even played drums, the rhythm section. Tom Scott played saxophone, flute.
Yeah.
But that was the other revelatory thing, is that Harrison put together a tour with a bunch of, you were not on, I think Willie Weeks was on the tour, but cats like Tom Scott and I think Robin Ford and Emil would come out and play with the Indian musicians, and then they'd do a jazz set after that. So what was that experience like with Ravi? I mean, what was that? Because everything was. I just have this entire mishmash of like, John Densmore sitting with Alu Raka, and then Ravi. There's all this Indian music being incorporated into psychedelic rock, and then there's the electric bass. I mean, what was that experience like for you, hanging with these timeless musicians from India?
Well, I mean, it was just inspiring because it was a total thing at the time between the Maharishi and the spirituality of everything, and and Emil. In fact, Emil was my sponsor for the Maharishi. I mean, he actually. I forget what he brought me into it, and then we did the ceremony and all.
Hold on, did you go to India with Emil, or he just?
No, I didn't go to India. No, this was here in L.A.
So you went to hang. You went to see him speak, or you got initiated actually.
No, we would study, with the Maharishi, and Emil was like a sponsor, and any as you would join. How do you say it? I don't.
No, he was a guarantor for you. He brought you in.
Yeah, and exactly. So all of this was swirling together, and with Hari Har Rao, everything with the Beatles and George Harrison. It was like so exciting at the time and so new. And yet spiritual,
Not religious, not dogmatic, but spiritual.
No, not religious at all.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And many years went by with those kind of things until everything changed. Then, as we got into later in the 70s, but. It was just totally fascinating. Even with Don Ellis, we did Turkish bath with Zubin Mehta with the LA Philharmonic, and to talk about being nervous. Here I am with Zubin Mehta, an Indian, and a wonderful conductor, and here I am sitting on a rug with the sitar on, and it was my turn to play, and I went, oh, my God, just get me through this. But what can I say? It was time and place.
Did you, talking to Ray Neapolitan, having a ball here, actually just overwhelmed. Don Menza said he lost his mind with Don Ellis because when he was in the Army with Don, they were playing straight ahead. And then when he got back and saw him again, he was playing like 13/8 or 17/11. He lost his mind. Like Menza just lost his mind. So, go ahead.
There was a lot of guys that just didn't want to deal with it. They just did not want to deal with it. So many people came in and out of the band, great players, that. Keltner came in and out. He said, "No, that's really not for me."
Wait, Keltner was playing with
Roger Kellaway.
Oh, dude. That's what I was going to say is that, because, Sywall was talking about tripping on mescaline with Kellaway and Tom Scott and Joe Beck, this band called the Pleasure Principle.
The Pleasure Principle, yeah.
Right. And there, you had Larry Coryell with the Free Spirits on the East Coast, and you guys were doing your own thing. With it was just this smorgasbord of music, but as far as you're telling me Don and Kurt, I guess that was the other part of it. The pioneers of music have always been the least snobbish people, They've always been willing to find and search for new ground. And it seems to me that even though I haven't chronicled him a ton, Don Ellis is one of those guys that he wasn't a snob. It wasn't like he encouraged you to pick up the electric bass. I mean,
Absolutely.
which at the time most jazz people would be like, "You're not playing the real shit, man. You're not playing beat. You're not."
Don was not like that at all. Not like that at all. He it was sort of like a Miles kind of spirit, where he would push everybody to be as creative and right in the now as we could be.
Right.
And even though the stuff was so difficult, to play at first and most of the time it was difficult, but yet that's why we all did it. He would rehearse us to death, and yet we were there every time because we knew we were creating something that wasn't around at the time. Now with the three basses, obviously we tried all kinds of pickups that weren't really around at the time. We would try mics, amps to amplify the string basses because we were getting killed.
Well, how did you stay out of How did you all stay out of each other's way, though? That to me is confounding.
Well, here's what it was. I would play the top, and Chuck would play the middle of the register, and either it was Bill Plummer or Frank Della Rosa would play the bottom. Would just keep the time. So I was totally free on top, and Chuck was as well. But we always had one bass player that was sort of holding it down for us. And then there were parts though, but a lot of it was written parts. So we did have our registers to play in, and then sometimes the third bass player would play with the bow, or making different sounds out of the instrument, Then we started using, some kind of poor amplification, and that wasn't really happening because the rest of the band was bleeding in. So that's when the Fender thing came up. And Don said, well, why don't you pick up a Fender? And then he said, the next week, all of a sudden, there was a Fender there for me. So
had you seen cats playing? No, it was so funny. I just transcribed this last night. Bucky Pizzarelli was one of the cats that played. He was talking to me about the Fender bass guitar. Okay, he was playing on these sessions in New York, right? And then, but Chuck Rainey's like, I don't call it a guitar. It's a bass. It's a Fender bass. Okay.
Right.
The first cat, like I said, Monk Montgomery on an Art Farmer record in '53 played an electric bass on this album. Like, had you seen somebody else playing the electric bass in a jazz setting prior to Ellis saying, just pick up an electric?
There was a few, there was a few, but not, mainly when I first started hearing the electric bass was with R&B bands in Chicago, blues bands. It
was like Louis Satterfield, or who were you seeing?
I can't even remember now exactly who. A lot of the bands that were just.
I mean, obviously, like Motown was like Jamerson, but that was on record. But it would just be interesting to know.
This is before that even. This is like 50s, 60s kind of bands that would, come up with the first kind of electric Fender, if there were Fenders at all, that I would see, like bands like, which I had some experience, like the Treniers, those kind of black, Chitlin Circuit kind of band.
Oh, I did. No. There was a cat. I want to ask you about this guy. I was in this interview with Phil Upchurch. He was talking about this guy named Reggie Boyd who played bass on Watusi by the Vibrations in the late '50s. I mean, there's just so much. But I mean, way before. I mean, we're talking way before you started marinating in the Turkish bath with Ellis. You were seeing cats playing the electric bass, but it was more in the R&B or early rock.
I wasn't interested. Yeah. But
I
wasn't interested. I mean, it was. It was just something I was not interested in until that time period, which was about 60. Yeah, it was about
68.
68.
Yeah.
No, 67, I think, when we started. Because, I mean, earlier, 66, I was playing bass with Cara McRae, with string bass. And, I mean, how different can it be?
A lot, yeah. Well, then, yeah. I mean, that's just like you're playing American songbook stuff. I mean, and then you're going to the.
Yeah.
I mean, like, did everybody switch over, or was it like then at that point it was?
Not a lot.
I know I'm saying did Domenico and you both switch at the same time, or was it?
No, Chuck. Well, let me say this first. There was a few. That were string bass players, and it took a long time for those people who played the string bass to switch to Fender, and a lot of them just didn't do it. Chuck only did. He didn't like. He call it. I don't want to play the pork chop. He would call it.
Oh, I love it. The pork chop, dude. Domenico was. Yeah, I mean, dude. I have this album. By the way, we have to do some serious work on your discography on All Music Guide because it's a tremendous disservice to you. It's like it goes from like Ohio Knox, which is like so bizarre, and then all of a sudden it's like boom, all of a sudden it goes to 1975. There's 4 years missing, and I'm like, no, Domenico. I mean, I'm sorry, Neapolitan was on. There's no listing of the Mackay sessions on Impulse, but I have this album with Domenico.
Oh, yeah.
Domenico's playing with Elvin and Bobby Hutcherson and Barney Kessel, and it's like. There's a tune called Bluegrass on it, and it's like this sick, and he's playing upright bass. The dude was, I mean, yeah. I love the Cats. I love you guys, the guys that came out of Chicago. Charlie Musselwhite, well, actually Musselwhite wasn't born in Chicago, but I mean, it's just like the amount of blues, the Chicago blues that you brought to the West Coast was absolutely invigorating. At the same time, a revelation for me, talking to Ronnie Steele yesterday, who played with the Soulful Strings and was a studio shark in Chicago. The studios in Chicago were probably hopping more than New York in the 50s. That was, I mean, they was.
Well, there's a lot going on. Yeah.
Oh my! And I was not aware of that.
Especially commercials, later on with jingles.
Jingles, yeah. Oh God,
for
yeah.
Sure.
Let me ask you a question though. When this is where the rubber meets the road because, the greatest thing about it is that, like, I mean, you were. By the way, I don't want to get away from the Danny Long stuff either. That stuff is insane. All of that is on YouTube, by the way. The trio stuff that you were doing. But
it is.
Oh yeah, it's all and actually you're kind of low in the mix. It's kind of I don't like the way they recorded it, but it still speaks to what you were doing. But like the thing for me that blew my mind after doing 3 interviews with Keltner is that the dude started out at a music shop in Santa Monica somewhere, and he was teaching snare drum. And David Lindley was teaching banjo, and Gary Foster was teaching clarinet. And Keltner was playing gigs with Albert Stinson. He was recording with playing with Claire Fisher. I mean, Keltner was a jazzer. He was playing jazz gigs. I mean, did you get a chance to play with Keltner before he decided he didn't want to be a starving genius anymore, and then pivoted directly into the studio scene? Did you play jazz with Keltner?
No, not really with any small groups, not that I can remember. No, only,
But were you aware that he played jazz, or did you just find out later? Because like people like Emil didn't know.
I found out later. Yeah, no, I didn't know that. At the time, well, it was. When Keltner was playing jazz, it was Jim Gordon was also playing jazz.
See that all
with Jim a lot with Joanne Grauer.
Wait, I'm sorry, you played with Jim Gordon?
Yeah, we had the trio with Joanne Grauer, and we recorded some stuff too, and Jim Gordon.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
This is not listed anywhere. I mean, this was actually recorded on record or 45 or whatever.
No, it's on a record, 33,
Oh, my gosh. All these
A lot
cats.
of the stuff there, but
Yeah.
But with Jimmy, we really got close, with all the Spectre sessions and all that at that time when we did, the John Lennon, the Black Album, and we did Dion DiMucci, we did Leonard Cohen, a bunch of things with Spectre during that time.
I
period
cannot
as well.
believe. I mean, this Neapolitan, dude. We need to get the discography updated immediately. This is out of control, out of freaking. How much of it though had to do with the inflections, the jazz and blues inflections that you and Keltner and Gordon made that pop music of that time swing so good. I mean, where you had literally music that was radio friendly, that was swinging so hard. How much of it had to do with the foundations that you had from learning the traditional street music of jazz on the street?
It had everything to do with it. Absolutely. It's playing in those clubs every night, from 10 to 5 in the morning, just, finding the groove, and just swinging, going home happy, getting out of the club at 5, going to breakfast at Mammy's on Rush Street, getting home at 6:30 in the morning, start practicing around 2 in the afternoon. That's what it was. And you do the same thing again.
And you were getting paid for it. I mean, you were, that's part of it.
Yeah.
I just had this wonderful young singer on before you came on, Israeli singer who's in New York. And, I mean, what is she up against now? It's like, yeah, we'll give you $50 for 3 hours for a quartet, or you can pay to play, and I know that's why you walked away from the scene. I also wonder about, I mean, you were, I mean, I'm like you and Sklar, like you guys were like in the studio at a certain point. You would come in before the sun came up, and then you would leave, and you never saw the sun, right? I mean, there was a period of time where that was. Well,
yeah, there was a little period of time. I did a lot, but a lot of it was, was TV or was jingles, and a lot of it, was just work, unfortunately. I mean, which is great, to be able to do that, but it wasn't like, playing with Emil or any of those things we did early on, or with Don, where it was, it seems we all, even Chuck, we all sort of locked, they locked us into the studio runaround. You would just, that would be it. And you'd be so, not tired, but, you wouldn't do gigs at night that much because of it. And, I don't know. We lost a lot at a certain period.
Well, or you guys would, I mean, in fairness, you guys would have no problem going out and playing for free because you were making all your dough during the day. So
exactly.
Ernie Watts and you guys go out and blow your asses off. It didn't matter if you got any money for it.
Yeah.
You just wanted to play what you wanted to play, And it was a brotherhood too. And
right.
and
it really was.
And it's funny because cats like Densmore now. I mean, when I went to Toluca Lake last week and did this insane Facebook Live interview with Emil, that, I mean, it was like I received the Tao. I'm a Taoist, and it was like this hour of complete true nature in its full form. And I when you friend me, you can check out because it's so beautiful. The whole thing just flows so beautifully, and I just wonder. I mean, you actually left music entirely. Sywell said, you just got out, and I just wonder with cats like Densmore and Paul Farso and all these cats that were completely ingrained and engrossed with that in the moment, seeking your true nature, Maharishi, the brotherhood. How depressing the scene became and where it is today. I mean, I wonder how unfulfilled you, even with all the great music you did, the fact that you had all your mentors, the people, the masters that helped bring you up, and now what is there today for you to keep that lineage together? I mean, that's why I do my show. But at the same time, do you feel it's like you did so much for all the right reasons to make good music that felt good or to inspire people to push them out of their comfort zone, and now it's become just some, and I don't want to get into all like what it's become, but how do you stay fulfilled knowing that you have that legacy and knowing that it's gone so far astray?
Well, what happened for me after doing all whatever I've done, in the '70s and in the '80s, as the '80s came around with the synthesizers and drum machines and all that, had a really, and the home studios had a real effect on everything. And I was doing more and more television, and this was after 4 years of the Gong Show, which
is insane. That in itself.
It was insane. It was a lot of fun, but it wasn't musical by no respect. And what can I say? It just the muse had left me by that time. And after that, there was a couple things I did in the early '80s, and I think one of the last few traveling gigs I did with Denise Williams. I went out with her for like '82 to '84, '85, something like that. And then I just totally left. And my daughter was born in '85, and I sort of said, well, maybe I should do something else because I'm really bored, and I used to want to fall into a lot of musicians that had just sort of lost their way, and we were either then teaching to survive or just playing terrible gigs or going on the road for no reason at all, with someone they didn't want to be out there with.
Yeah, well, so that's the point is that it became like a formula trip, Like I remember Clarence McDonald told me like he knew when they brought in these efficiency models to Herb Albert, and by the way, A&M Records, God bless, they were cranking those Cosmic Brotherhood records out. Actually, that might have been Impulse too. But it's just when they brought in these people, I guess when the bean counters got involved, it really became a burn. It was a burn. It got to be a burn.
Absolutely right. So what I did, I just scratched my head, and another friend of mine, Stuart Levin, a pianist and a composer, we were just tossing it around. What can we do, man, just to make some? So he said, let's start a limo company. And I said, well, that's not a bad idea. All the people we know, all the musicians, all the studios, So that's what we did. We started this limo company. And, as strange as that was, and I just felt so weird about that, but we did it. And our clients were all the musicians, and was Ella Fitzgerald and Miles Davis, just all kinds of people like that. And I got to really, know Miles at that time as well as Ella very well. And then came Joe Cocker. We had the same business managers, Gary Haber, and then I was saying, listen, I don't want to get in this limo business. It's not for me. I said, Gary, keep an ear open, if anything's coming up. But he said, hey, Joe Cocker's looking for a tour manager. You just fired him, And,
wow.
And prior to that, I had met Joe many times and known him. And so that's how, then I went, this was '87, and I went to work for Michael Lang from Woodstock fame and Joe Cocker. And I was totally fascinated with that side of the business that I had despised, really, management and doing settlements and so forth. And that's how all that started. But yet I was still involved in the music. And what made it successful for me is that I didn't come from a business background, or I didn't come from a legal background, but from a musical background. So it was easy for me, and the musicians, my relationship with all the musicians was just fabulous. So I stayed, for 27 years with Joe.
It's interesting.
And
you came in with the soul quality, but you didn't have the greed factor. You weren't obsessed with the bottom line.
Not at all. I was all in for Joe and the band and the music, and that's what was my strong point for with Michael Lang, or later with Roger Davies.
Did you have a chance to collaborate? I mean, I look at Dick Shorey as being one of the percussive leaders of the Midwest, but did you work with Harry Partch at all?
Only with Amel.
What was that experience like? I mean, I would love to know the instruments that.
Well, well, I can't even explain it.
Yeah, believe me. I mean, this is the amount of consciousness expansion. I mean, we are where we are today for a lot of reasons, but part of it is the boutique realities of yoga, or what, formulaic music has become, or playing to machine parts. These guys were blowing people's brains open by making their own instruments and creating these 43-tone octaves. It was absolutely essential for consciousness expansion. So when you worked with Harry, can you talk about what was special about that experience, if you can put it into words?
Well, it was very minimal. I mean, and most of what I learned about Harry was through Amel. And but it was just, first of all, just trying to be a part of this thing, whatever we were playing, whatever instrument or thing we were playing. I mean, there used to be all these, I couldn't even explain what they looked like. They were just, you walked into the studio or an event stage and you couldn't recognize an instrument. So you go, uh-oh. Yeah, so but it was totally. I just loved the idea of creating something out of the ordinary, or reaching different levels. I don't I don't know what else to say about
no,
that. I just had to be there.
No, I mean, I would like to I mean, we've been cooking here for 70 minutes. I have a lot of more stuff that we need to get through. So, do you think maybe next week we could continue set 2 of this conversation?
Yeah, why not?
I mean, because
we're just starting now.
We're just getting started. I mean, but I just want to say that it is. I just would like you to talk about, before I let you go, your concept of love and how you've tried to bring love to this world over your career, not just musically, but as a human being. At 39, I look at this year, 2018, as being an absolutely... we're either going to stay as a banana republic, or we are going to veer into something way beyond democracy. Will be ragtime on the corner, and I'm looking for some inspiration, or basically how you bring love to the world.
Well, it has been a trying period of time that we're going through here, and the only thing I can think is I get closer to my family, to my daughters and my son. And when I see my grandchild now, who's 2.5, if you just look at her, and you go, what kind of a world will she be living in, and what can I teach her, to be able to live a fulfilled life, and all I can say is, I go back to, doing to others as they would do to you, and just to be honest, and I guess it's not very profound.
No, I mean, Keltner said it too. I don't know. Keltner said God is love, and when you look,
that's it.
yeah.
Something will spark us again to pull us all back together and straight. Whether it's the climate that will bring everyone together, or hopefully not something tragic. But,
well, I just feel like that's yeah. No, it's always we respond to these catastrophes like a sinkhole the size of the eastern seaboard of Florida going into the water because of rising tides, and then all of a sudden we're gonna,
right.
But I go back to the idea of the question I asked you before when we opened with Johnny Almond, Joe Pass, the jazz life. The part of the jazz life, what was the jazz life to Ray Neapolitan going back to when you first got into music? Because the bottom line is this: so many geniuses died broke. And I wonder about your concept of that. What was so intriguing about so many of those guys were in Synanon before you moved out there? Art Pepper spent most of his life in jail, but yet you listen to his music, it's just burning. What is your concept of the jazz life?
Well, first of all, it was never about money, and it couldn't be. It was about mastering your instrument, understanding harmony. That was so fascinating to me. Plus the colorful life of all the musicians through the 50s. That no matter how tragic their life was, that honesty and truth would come out in their playing. However flawed they were, there was this one part of them that rose to a spiritual kind of thing. Whether it was Bird or Sonny or Coltrane, or anyone after that. It was something that drove me, saved me through a lot of things. Where things were getting strange, all of a sudden you'd go right back to the instrument. I would practice for hours and days. That would sort of fulfill my soul again.
I did. Oh, this is great. Because, that's what Menza said. Menza got back from the Army in the late 50s and was ready to give up on music. He sold his horns. He was very depressed with the scene. And then he drove 3 hours in a snowstorm in Buffalo to go see Sonny Rollins play.
Yeah.
And Sonny played till like 3 a.m. and Menza, it was like an way beyond out-of-body experience. And he went back to the store the next day and bought his horn back and started to play again. Was there a time, even early on, when, like you talk about these sort of salvation moments, was there one where something similar where you saw somebody play and it totally got you, it was a demarcation point for...
Well, I've had those experiences all the way through, even when I wasn't playing. But when Joe Cocker died, December 22nd of 2014,
yes,
I had to make a decision. Am I going to stay in this part of the business, or what am I going to do? And there was no question. I picked up my instrument again. That was it. And that's what I'm doing today. Since then, I've been practicing every day, playing as much as I can, and I'm right back where I started.
Oh, you got it. Are you? Tell me please I'm coming out to LA again real soon.
We're hanging. Of course.
We're hanging, but I'm saying let's get Sywell, Keltner, double drums. Let's get a gig, man. Let's get a gig together, dude. I seriously.
That would be great.
Yeah, but so you became inspired to completely pick up the apparatus again and start to practice.
Right.
You play a gig here and there? I mean, do you have any gigs lined up for the new year? I will plan my trip around coming out.
No, not any gig, but we're playing. There's a couple bands. One with John Morell, the guitarist.
Oh, dude, I've been looking for that cat forever, dude.
All right, I'll set you up.
Oh my God, dude, Johnny Morell. Anyway, man, listen. You guys are the ones that should be running this country, okay? You should be the ones instituting public policy. That's what my show is about. I've been doing this for 6 years. It's a sacred journey, and every time I face some sort of adversity, and there's been a lot with my family, my daughters, my wife, everything. Mm-hmm. You know what? There's a buoyancy and a spirit that you guys have given me that allows me to not just dust myself off. I actually get higher from the adversity. And it's the most infectious thing in the world compared to what could be perceived as the toxicity of how people say, the rules that people say you should lead your life by. You guys have given me that internal drive to be fearless and never give up. And I'll just, to the point where I'm sticking my iPhone in David Garibaldi's face and Pat Martino's face and Randy Brecker's face and Emil Richards' face. And I now am connecting with we're doing it telephonically today, and we may do another telephonic hang, and then the next time it's going to be in person. And that's what it's about, man. It's about humanity, dude. And you know that. And,
I love it.
And bless you, man. And so we'll do set two. We're just getting started here because we didn't even get to anything in the early. We were just bouncing everywhere. But believe me, Domenico's looking down on us, smiling.
Oh, I know that.
And email me I need to see some of the. Send me a good pic from you in the gravy years with the Don Ellis, the three basses, and
okay.
And but no, I'm serious. When I want to come out and do a Facebook Live video of a gig with you and Johnny Morell. I cannot believe you just dropped that.
That would be excellent, yeah.
And
yeah.
I would, yeah.
Well, in fact, the drummer with this quartet is Paul Soros is playing saxophone, and Alan Estes, who was part of the Don Ellis band.
Alan's playing, but he played vibes a lot too.
I know he's
dude. You are bringing these.
Hell of a drummer.
Oh my, dude, this is going to be one of the greatest things of all time. Of all time. I am so fired up, Neapolitan. Listen,
cool.
Have a happy.
Well, we'll do a gig, yeah.
Well, no, but let's set a time, if not today, tomorrow, for this week to do part two, and then and we'll just go from there, my bud. All right.
Great, Jake. It's been fun. Man.
Yo, man. Have a blessed New Year. All my love to your family. So great to connect with you, man. Later on, dude.
Jake, all the best.
Oh, you too, brother. Peace.
Bye.
Well, that's it for 2017. Ray Neapolitan in the books. We heard from Sivan Arbel prior to that. It's been a great year, a lot of progress, and we'll be back real soon. Thanks to Jim Parisi and everybody here at Power Talk. Happy New Year. Peace.